So it's 2:30 right now, so I think it's time for our workshop to start. So I'd like to invite a university from Hertfordshire to lead this workshop today. Yeah, thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back for those of you who were at our first workshop in the online series. My name's Sarah. I was here last time, if you were here before. If you were, it's a pleasure to see you again. But this morning, most of our work for us, and this afternoon for you, our workshop will be led by one of my colleagues, Mark, who is on the call. I will allow Mark to introduce himself for reasons which will become obvious as we move through. And we're going to spend some time this morning thinking about the language associated with leadership. So Mark, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And thank you everyone for joining us. Please do let me know if I'm audible. Maybe use the chat if there are any problems with my sound or the videos. I hope you can all see my slides. Yeah, welcome to everyone. Thank you very much, Sarah. And I know I actually have a few Vietnamese students in the audience, and it's a real pleasure to to have them join us too. So these are students of mine at Hertfordshire. I'm Mark Holloway. I'm the Associate Director for Education, and my remit is particularly around academic skills and the development of academic skills across our curriculum. My background is in English language teaching and in English for academic purposes. And one of the things that I do at Hertfordshire is I teach on a program called the MA TESOL, which is a master's degree in teaching English to speakers of other languages. And one of the many wonderful things about that program is that about 50% of our students every year are Vietnamese English teachers. So some of them are in the meeting today, some from this year and some from previous years. And I think they're going to be helping me out at different points. I hope so anyway. So the plan for today is to try to be as interactive and personalized as possible. We've kind of got three parts to our workshop. I'll start by just asking you a few questions about yourselves and your relationship with, particularly with English. We will look at a couple of examples of leaders, women leaders, and the way that they speak and use English. We'll use them as an example. We'll look at a couple of examples. We'll discuss things that we notice about them and things that we find interesting or different, particularly in comparison with Vietnamese speakers and leaders speaking Vietnamese. And then I'm going to try to be practical and give you some simple tools for how you might build the impactfulness of the way that you speak in English. And then hopefully we'll have some time at the end for you to really practice that and talk to one another in a meaningful way. So you may notice that at the top right of my slides it says Mentimeter, because the idea is this will be an interactive presentation using Menti. If you have another device that you can use, you can scan this QR code to join. Or you can, in a browser, go to menti.com and type in the number that will always be at the top of the screen. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing that in the chat. So I'd like to start by asking you a couple of questions. And the first you can see here. Don't worry about making any mistakes, especially not spelling mistakes. You can, if it's easier to use Vietnamese, do. But if you can use English, that will probably make things faster, and it's part of the purpose of the workshop anyway. The my first question, where and why do you currently use English? You may be able to answer it in just one word, and there's a pretty good word on the screen right now. So if you can capture in just one word the places and the purposes of your use of English, we'll see these appear on the screen, and we'll just give that 1 minute. If you can't access the Menti and would like to put your answers into the chat, you're more than welcome to. And in the sections of the workshop where people are typing something, if you want to speak instead of typing, you can try. We're very happy to hear your voices and see faces. Okay, this is helpful for us to get a sense of who you are in relation to your use of English. I like movie and music. I don't know about TikTok. When my daughter's not allowed to watch TikTok, but she still, all the TikTok videos come to us through YouTube anyway. So we're losing the battle against TikTok. I don't hear, I usually hear like music from TikTok videos, but there you go. Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. A second question for you, where maybe you want to say a little bit more. Again, if you want to answer in single words, that's fine, but you can write these as sentences. There are 2 questions here, and you're welcome to answer one or both. What challenges do you face when using English? But also, what are your ambitions in relation to your use of English? What would you like to be able to do in English? What would you like to be able to do with English?
Mark, I will just say I was very heartened to see grammar come up first of all, because this is my main challenge in using English, even as an English native speaker. Our colleagues in Vietnam may not know, but in the English education system for young people, at a time when many years ago people would have been maybe learning grammar at an age, Helen, Mark and I are all of a similar age. And when we went to school, we were not taught English grammar at all. You were expected just to understand the rules of the language. So please feel that there is some connectivity with us, that we lean heavily into our colleagues in the workplace who have more English language qualifications by often calling across the office and saying, do I write it like this or do I write it like that?
Yeah, you can probably, it's very kind that Sarah says that we're the same, similar age. I'm the oldest, obviously. You can tell I'm much older than Sarah and Helen. But yeah, I studied language and literature, English language and literature as an undergraduate. And that was my first that was the first time in my life I learned about language. We didn't do that at school. So my daughter now is 12. When she was 7 years old, her homework had the kind of linguistic jargon that I don't fully understand. So we've changed. Okay. Well, this is brilliant. This is magical, because it's given us already an opportunity to say, like, don't worry about the grammar. the grammar will, I'd like to think the grammar will take care of itself if you do actually the more enjoyable stuff, which is communicating, reading, listening, speaking. And actually what we're going to do today Brilliant. I'm going to try and give you some really simple tools for addressing some of these challenges around like spoken English with accents, and maybe not understanding them today, but understanding why they're a challenge and how we can overcome that. But also that idea of becoming feeling more natural in our own use of English. Yeah, we'll do some work on that. I want to pronounce like an English native speaker. Be careful what you wish for, right? When you're thinking about native speakers, think about which native speakers you want to speak like. When my father is a native speaker of English. When he was a young man, he was told he would never achieve anything in life with his accent, which is terrible, but sadly true. I grew up in a family where everyone had an accent from Birmingham, the UK's second city. I'll speak about this later, about how our accent seemed to be valued or not in country. All right. So let's start on the subject of native speakers and how they sound. We're going to look at some maybe famous, maybe not famous female leaders and the way they use English. We'll use those as a case study, and then we'll do something practical. Now, in 25 years of teaching, maybe more actually, in 25 years of teaching, more or less, I've kind of realized that I only really ever need 2 questions. My favorite 2 questions, and my students who are attending today will know this and might find it quite boring, but my favorite 2 questions are, what do you notice and what do you wonder? And what I love about those 2 questions is that I think everybody can answer both of those questions about any subject. And like, what do you notice is just, what do you see? Like, what things seem interesting or apparent to you? What do you wonder is about your curiosity, the connections you make with your thinking, and questions you might want to ask. So I just want to try this with you all today. I've got 2 images here, and on the next slide I've got a question, so you can type things in. If you've got other people in the room with you, feel free to talk to them. But yeah, I don't know if you know the people in these images or not, but from these 2 photos, you can pick one or you can look at both. What do you notice about the images, and what do you wonder about the images or the people in them or what's behind them? Anything like that. So yeah, what do you notice? What do you wonder? Something I love about these questions is there's never a wrong answer, right? What you notice is what you notice. You might notice the color of someone's eyes. You might notice that something about someone's hairstyle. That's absolutely fine. Whatever you notice, whatever you wonder about these people, it's absolutely fine. Lovely. Two perfect. The first responses there, absolutely perfect. I noticed they're smiling, and I want to know who they are. I like that. I noticed their genuine smile. You should be able to navigate back through the slides yourselves if you want. I think someone has quite rightly looked at the previous slide and noticed that one of the women is pregnant. Right. Successful women, happy women. Does anybody know who they are? You're welcome to. The pregnant lady looks confident and clear that she wants to communicate something. Yes, the pregnant lady is the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern. Friends or relatives or workmates. See, I wonder if even my colleagues who we work in higher education in the United Kingdom, do we know the two women standing in front of the globe? Interesting.
I do, because only because I was let into the secret yesterday. It's probably worth challenging Helen before she disappears. Helen, do you know who they are?
Oh, I'm shaking my head. No.
So the woman on the left is Professor Deborah Prentice. The woman on the right is Professor Irene Tracy. And they are respectively sorry, I've drawn on my screen. They are respectively the vice chancellors, so the leaders of the University of Cambridge and the University of Oxford. So everybody knows about the University of Hertfordshire, the two other top universities in the UK, Oxford and Cambridge, and these are their leaders. Okay, right. So that's pretty much my methodology. Whenever I show you something, I'm going to ask you, what do you notice and what do you wonder? Now, I don't know how I've managed to draw over Margaret Thatcher's face here, but can you see like a blue line on my screen? Okay, I'm going to have to, I'll work on that when we're doing our next activity, but it feels very disrespectful. Okay, so earlier, Sarah took us back to, I don't want to give too much away, but Sarah took us back to roughly the 1980s when I was in school. And I feel it's kind of, oh, thank you for my pen has disappeared. I feel a bit strange doing a webinar for this audience, given we're really, our focus is on, it's the language of leadership, but we're particularly interested in women in leadership roles. And of course, here I am, I'm a man, I'm in a semi-leadership role, I would say. But when I was a child, my father wasn't really around. So I had two older sisters, my mom. I was surrounded by female leadership. And my prime minister, or the country's prime minister at the time, was Margaret Thatcher. Now, yeah, I'm just going to show you a clip of Margaret Thatcher speaking. And I tried to put I don't know if it will be, if the audio will work, but I can do her accent. I can do an impression if you need me to, but let's try not to. I've actually put her words on the screen as well. So what's on the left are the words that you're going to hear Margaret Thatcher say. This was a speech she gave at her party conference. That's the Conservative Party conference in 1980. She became Prime Minister of the UK in 1979, and immediately started to kind of open up like free markets in the UK. That was what she was doing, is kind of like closing the state and opening markets is one way of talking about it. And there was speculation that she wouldn't keep doing this. There would be what we call it's a very common term in UK politics, a U-turn. Now, a U-turn is like you're driving in the road and then you want to turn and go in the opposite direction. So it's shaped like a U. In the news this week in the UK, on the front pages of some newspapers today, you can see the word U-turn, because I don't know why, but in UK politics, the worst thing you can do is change your mind. Like, it feels like our leaders have to just keep doing whatever they're doing, whether it works or not. So U-turns in the British media are like a bad thing. And Margaret Thatcher made this really famous, what became a very famous but very short speech about how she wasn't going to U-turn away from her economic policy. I'll play it to you. now, oh, I have to switch to another mode to play it.
Catchphrase, the U-turn.
Is that audible? Everyone might need to turn their volume up.
We can hear that, Mark. Thank you.
Okay.
To those waiting with bated breath for that favourite media catchphrase, the U-turn, I have only one thing to say. U-turn if you want to. The ladies not for turning.
Okay, so that's Margaret Thatcher back in 1980. And as we move forward into the future, into our recent past, here's the lady that you saw earlier. You noticed that she was pregnant. So speaking in Parliament in New Zealand in 2018 about her government's budget. So Jacinda Ardern was Prime Minister at the time, pregnant Prime Minister, and she's more famous for in terms of her speeches. There are more famous speeches that she gave that I'm sharing with you in another format, but we won't look at right now. I think generally in the English-speaking world, she was considered maybe one of the most successful leaders during the pandemic, as in the most successful in communicating messages, kind of being a leader, being a figurehead for her country, and actually having successful policy. So there's the speech that she gives the first time she addresses the nation on TV about COVID measures is really great. There's also a speech that she gave to a community after a terrorist attack that is it's a kind of like very highly regarded speech. But I think this is maybe a bit more of a normal speech from her on a special occasion, but not an extraordinary occasion. And I also just love the fact that she's giving this speech while pregnant. So the words are on the screen again. She's saying more than
I've got
Margaret.
a few things I would first like to address to our Minister of Finance, Grant Robertson. Budgets, even when designed to serve an entire country, an entire population, are still a very personal thing. Because behind every single dollar is a story, and behind every single dollar is an unmet need. No decision in this budget was ever taken lightly. No decision was ever flippant or less important than the other. Each was considered, it was prioritised, it was balanced to form some firm foundations for the future. So I want to thank Grant Robertson for never losing sight of those important decisions in every single step of this budget.
Okay, so we've seen and we've heard Margaret Thatcher. We've seen and we've heard Jacinda Ardern, and I'd just like you to think about those two short speeches that you've heard, and even if bye-bye Helen, even if you haven't understood everything that they've said, I think in a way it doesn't matter. You can look at their body language, you can look at the way they sound, the way that they look while they're speaking. With Margaret Thatcher, you could see an audience reaction to her. What, if anything, do you notice about the way these women speak? One from 1980, one from 2018. So you can compare them if you like, or you can comment on just one of them. And maybe what do you wonder about that? You can ask questions around why or how. I'll ask separately. So I'm going to ask you to share your thoughts on the way that they're similar and the way that they're different, or anything you notice. Afterwards, I will talk you through a few kind of points from kind of linguistic analysis, and then I'll ask you how that compares with how you might expect a woman with a leadership role to speak in Vietnamese. Any similarities and any differences. So if we'll take like 3-4 minutes, so you can have a think, you can write into Menti coming next. I'll put a link into the chat, or Sarah will put a link into the chat. I've also made a kind of object which is called using a tool called ThingLink, and this QR code takes you there. It kind of looks like this. So what I've done in this kind of separate resource is I've just put some short videos together in a sequence, and I've collected some short videos of different women leaders speaking, and you can move through them and just play anything that you're interested in. So we've got Angela Merkel, we've got Margaret Thatcher, we've got Jacinda Ardern, and I've put a few different speeches of hers in. But I've also put, I think it's a bit difficult, and I'll talk about why in a moment. But I've also put a couple of videos of our vice chancellors of Oxford and Cambridge in there as well. So if you want more of a challenge, if you're a very confident user of English, you could have a look at those and look at the way that they're communicating with each other. So my question is there. If anyone wants to speak rather than type, feel free to do so. But otherwise, anything that you notice about the way the women speak, the way that they use English, and any wonder you have, any questions, any other thoughts? It's really interesting that the first 2 responses use the word sharp. So I think that's an important observation, because it kind of helps clarify the context. That Margaret Thatcher in that speech really is, someone's used the word assertive. She's telling her audience, this is how it is. I'm not changing. And quite right, Jacinda Ardern was actually, she's talking about her government's budget, but she's doing it by expressing gratitude to her colleague who's got responsibility for it. Authority with credibility. This is something we'll come back to. Someone makes the observation, slowly and stressed on important words. And later on, if you want to take time to look at some of those other videos, we have a clip of our of Deborah Prentice and Irene Tracy at a Women in STEM festival, and they're just having a conversation. Well, they're having a conversation on a stage, but it's a conversation. They're not giving speeches, and I think that can be more difficult to follow. But they still do speak in this way. They don't actually go fast. They're not afraid to speak slowly, and they're not afraid to have silence. But it might sometimes feel like they're speaking very quickly. But I'm going to try to explain something about that in our practical section. Wonderful. Okay, you can keep posting your own observations if you like. some general observations, and you may or may not have noticed these. I kind of included Margaret Thatcher in this partly to take us back to 1980 when I was young and happy, and the football team I support were quite good. But like Margaret Thatcher is a really interesting case in terms of the way that she speaks, because it was much less common to have a woman in British politics in 1980, and she was the first UK Prime Minister who was a woman. So she actually had voice coaching. She had a voice coach to adapt the way that she speaks so that she could be, I mean, you've said assertive, but it was about her being able to hold attention of an audience. And the one basic thing that the speech coach did with her was encouraged her to make her intonation rise at the end of a sentence. Because if when your intonation is rising, it's telling the listener, I haven't finished, I'm going to say more, and you're less likely to be interrupted. So you can see that in the way that Thatcher speaks. I think people have already observed this, but really a basic element of linguistics in English language, the way English language works, is that we always give stress to new information. So if you listen to what gets stressed, you're listening to what the speaker wants you to pay attention to. Even in these two short clips, we see rhetorical devices, and if we look at what Jacinda Ardern says, she actually does quite a bit of repetition. Behind every single dollar is a story. Behind every single dollar is an unmet need. Okay, so no decision. She uses repetition for emphasis and for impact. And she uses something that you may be familiar with in English, the power of three. So each was considered, it was prioritized, it was balanced. So putting things into groups of three seems to make them more impactful and memorable in English. Some other things from kind of like research around leaders and the English speaking world. I'm not sure I like this one, but typically in surveys about who people consider to be a good leader, individuals with deeper voices tend to be associated with having leadership qualities. Now that may be like very heavily kind of biased and skewed towards kind of male populations. Actually, women in New Zealand and Australia actually have deeper voices than women in the UK, for example. So maybe that's one reason why Jacinda Ardern is considered successful over here. But yeah, I think actually there's a cultural thing around these deep voices and what it might mean to lead, and something that I think we can overcome. Because one thing that we can see being overcome just in these two examples, and certainly in the other examples I've shared, is that in my lifetime, I'm 50, I've seen a huge shift in the kind of accents that I hear from leaders and from public figures. And I mentioned my father being told he would never be successful with a Birmingham accent. When I was a child and I had a Birmingham accent, I never saw, the only people I saw on TV with the same accent as me were characters who are typically not very clever. Yeah, and usually actors not from Birmingham doing a kind of joke Birmingham accent. It still is quite a low status accent. And on the BBC, on TV news, and on radio, I didn't hear that accent. Margaret Thatcher is not from a particularly wealthy or privileged background, but she still speaks a standard form of English that's referred to as received pronunciation. And that kind of delivery is what was required in order to be a public figure, like from up until the 1980s, I'd say. Whereas now, all of the examples I'm sharing with you today, other than Margaret Thatcher, they speak a non-standard form of English. They don't speak in this received pronunciation. We have a New Zealand accent. We don't see so many, and this is my challenge to everyone in the room. We need to see more non-native, non-standard accents. Angela Merkel is an example that I've included. I think she speaks brilliantly. Her English is not very good, she's not a confident user of English, but she's a confident speaker, and I think it works. But our vice chancellors of Oxford and Cambridge also have particular non-standard forms of English. I think you can also see increasing informality in the videos that I've shared with you. And I should probably add, and you may have been difficult to notice, but there's a lot of use of humour. And I don't remember Margaret Thatcher as being a humorous leader, but even in that very famous speech, what she's doing is making a kind of joke, and she makes her audience laugh, and that's part of the power. So I think in the English-speaking world, you can have impact in your speech through humour. Some other observations from kind of linguistic analysis of this kind of stuff. That there's kind of like data on differences between the way male leaders use English and the way that female leaders do. Statistically, male leaders are more likely to use specific details, use judgment, give commands, refer to locations, which I think is strange, use shorter sentences. So it's interesting, you said that the women that we listened to were sharp, concise, direct. Men tend to use shorter sentences. Men tend to use, or male leaders tend to use I more often. Whereas female leaders are more likely to use more adverbs, particularly at the start of a sentence. They do more to qualify what they're saying and hedge, so they use more nuanced language. This feels like it's kind of stereotype territory, but analysis of female leaders that tend to refer to emotions more than male leaders. They generally use longer sentences, though I think it's difficult to tell whether that is something to do with speech writing or not. As we looked at Jacinda Ardern, there's some really nice stuff on her evolution as a leader and the way that the kind of evolution of the way that she uses language as a leader. Something that happened in her time as Prime Minister of New Zealand is that actually, contrary to the previous slide, she was someone who did use I a lot in her speech early on in her political career. But as time passed in her leadership of the country, there was a tendency for her to use the word we rather than I. And she's someone, and this may be something to do with the impact that she's had. She makes frequent use of what we call commissive speech acts. That's when you make a commitment for the future. And by that, I don't just mean, I'll help you, I'll do that, but like a firm, we are going to do this and this is how we're going to do it. She's quite direct and doesn't, although she seems quite friendly, she doesn't use like typical politeness. She doesn't use a lot of kind of polite language around what she says. So you picked up on directness, but she's also quite direct in terms of saying what she will do. Right. So back over to you. If we can compare what we've seen there with whether you want to pick on the speakers we've seen, or any of these generalizations about the differences between male and female leaders in their use of English. When it comes to use of Vietnamese, so I'm not talking about Vietnamese leaders using English, but the use of Vietnamese by leaders. Do you think there are any differences? Does what I've just said seem very different to what you see in Vietnam? Do you see similar kinds of differences between men and women in the way that they speak? Is there anything that you've seen that kind of surprises you or doesn't really translate? Again, feel free to type or to speak if you prefer. For those of you in the room who have any kind of leadership role, if you wanted to write something about how you feel like you need to speak or use language in that leadership role, feel free to share that. We've got the word sharp again. I won't put pressure on my students to say anything, but I'll follow up with you directly about this sharpness. It's really interesting.
Mark, if I come in, I really like the comment that is there about thinking about indirect communication when we're speaking. And I think that's something that working in these intercultural spaces like we have here is something that is really interesting, because I think it's something that isn't always immediately obvious when you are in a situation, perhaps if you're giving a speech or you're speaking at a meeting where you are just getting to know people. I think the idea of being able to judge how direct or how you have to have maybe some pleasantries and some smaller pieces of conversation before you get to the business or to the key message, I think is something that is often difficult to navigate when you have mixed
Professor
cultures in the
Sarah?
room, but also when there
Okay.
is also between different people as well.
Yeah, I think also in terms of using English globally, so using English as a lingua franca, so I think there's a form of English there that is used with much more directness, and we are in the UK and we are probably the most indirect users of English in the world. So that kind of Vietnamese might have more indirectness than English spoken global as a global language. But yeah, come to the UK and you'll feel very at home. I was told by a former colleague that she knew when I was disagreeing with her because I would start my speech with the word yes. So how indirect is that? Okay. English tend to be more straightforward. Okay. Lovely. Feel free to add to this. We're going to move on to the kind of practical element of this workshop. I hope there's something here that everyone will be able to join in with and take something away from. Because actually what I'm proposing is something quite simple. And we've got some simple tools to explore for using your voice for impact by looking at word stress, which someone pointed out someone used the word stress in the second question I asked about like concerns and ambitions. And you'll see the repeat of the word stress. It's quite nice to be talking about stress in a linguistic sense and not like the stress of work and the world and pressure. But word stress, something called stress timing, stress for meaning, an activity called or an action or an approach to language called sound scripting, which will help you to actually to understand things possibly, but also to help you to deliver the things that you want to say. Intonation will be woven through this. So I'm a firm believer in the importance of general knowledge as well as our specialized knowledge. And my colleagues and friends here will love a quiz, I think. So on the screen, there are 8 flags from different countries from around the world. I'm curious to know how many of these flags do you think you recognize? How many flags do you think you could identify and tell us the names of the country that they're from? And in the chat, could you just type a number? So if you look at this and think, yeah, I could identify about 3 of those, type in the number 3. If anyone thinks they could do all 8, you will impress us all. We've got a 3 and a 4. And there's no shame in saying 1 or 0. 3, 4, 3. Okay. Oh, my says 6. Anyone think they can go above 6? I know Sarah would be able to do 8, but she's too modest to say. Right. Great. So I'm going to give you a clue or a set of clues by showing you. I'm not showing you the answers, and in fact, I will not show you the answers to these questions. I won't identify the countries for you, but I'm currently showing you the stress patterns for the name of each country. And to explain what I mean by these stress patterns, so every word in English will have one syllable that has more stress and emphasis than the others. My name is Mark, so I am number 6. Mark, one syllable. There are lots of languages in the world where actually that's quite difficult, and people, when I get an extra syllable like Markun, marker, Marco. I'm Mark. I'm number 6. Sarah is number 2. Helen 2. Anyone want to tell me? My colleague Natalia is in the room. Anyone want to tell me from 1 to 8 which one is Natalia?
I think people also say it differently sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah. So Natalia, just like you said, Natalia, or sometimes Natalia. Oh, I couldn't do it. It's not.
But how, you know, what's the correct?
Yeah, it was the correct. Yes, but sometimes
I had you down as number 8, Natalia.
Natalia. Yeah.
My wife is number 5, Carolina. But as you say, Natalia, it can depend from it can change from person to person. So my daughter is number 1, Livia. But some people will just call that, will make it number 2, Livia, like that. So this, I'm sure this makes things super helpful. Like, please do, I don't mind if this is chaos. Please take off your mic and speak if you've got the answer. Number 1, anyone?
Switzerland.
Yeah, so number 1, Switzerland. Switzerland. Number 2?
Germany.
Egypt.
Egypt. Lovely. Number 3?
Japan.
Japan. Number 4?
Malaysia.
Malaysia. Yeah. I mean, you give it 4 syllables, so you're probably right, but I say Malaysia. Number 5?
Indonesia.
Yeah, Indonesia. And I feel terrible, like sounding like I'm correcting something. I'm just giving you like the boring British pronunciation of things. Indonesia. Number 6?
France.
France. Number 7?
Singapore.
Singapore. And number 8?
Palestine.
Oh,
Romania.
yeah, number 8 is Romania. Romania, right? Now, that's part 1 of our toolkit. Just thinking about, okay, there's a word that I need to say. Where's the stress? If I get the stress right, I get the word right. Some words in different accents will, and different dialects will have a slightly different stress. I'll put a link to a really nice resource called Youglish. It allows you to kind of search for a word being used in context in YouTube videos, and it will be, you know, you type in a word, and you'll be able to hear different people saying that word, and you'll get a sense of, actually, they don't all agree on how to say this. Sometimes that's the case, particularly in academia. Right now, fun activity. You can join in like by, I think probably best to do without microphones on, because that will get crazy. But you can do it without your microphone, or you can do it in your head, which is sometimes the best place to be. Listen to this. Right? I went to Japan, Egypt, Romania, France. Japan, Egypt, Romania, France. Now listen to what happens. I went to Japan and Egypt and Romania and France. I went to Japan and Egypt and Romania and France. And I can't see anyone's lips moving, but I kind of, you know, I want to get a sense that you're trying to do this at the same time. And it really helps to use a finger. I went to Japan, Egypt, Romania, France, Japan and Egypt and Romania and France. Sarah's doing it, thank you. Japan and Egypt and Romania and France. Sarah's in a shared office, so that's brilliant. Now look, what else happens? I went to Japan and then Egypt and then Romania and then France. I went to Japan and then Egypt and then Romania and then France. I went to Japan and then to Egypt and then to Romania and then to France. I went to Japan and then to Egypt and then Romania and then to France. And that might be where it gets a little bit difficult, and it's a little bit unnatural. But what I imagine you notice is when I was saying 4 words, it was taking me about 4 seconds. And when I said 16 words, it took me about 4 seconds. And this is because in an English sentence, the rhythm of our sentences will be determined by which words in that sentence are important and get stress. And it's one of the reasons why we started by saying, don't worry about the grammar. The grammar will take care of itself, because you don't hear the grammar. You hear Japan, Egypt, Romania, France. In between, it's and then to. You don't really hear that. So the good news there is, if you're listening to some speech, and if you look at the videos later and you think, wow, these vice chancellors from Oxford and Cambridge are difficult to follow, try and focus on the words they're emphasizing. Those are the ones that are carrying the meaning. And there's also a lesson for us in terms of the way we want to deliver what we're saying. Stress the important words, because if we're saying, I went to Japan and then to Egypt and then to Romania, it will sound very strange, right? Okay. We can see this in the in anybody's speech, and in any speech that we need to make. We could take these really simple principles and apply them to what we see and to what we hear, right? So I took that that very short clip from Jacinda Ardern and did what you see on the screen now. This is called sound scripting, and this is my kind of like #1 tool for all things related to English language pronunciation, right? When you know that every word will have one stress in it, and you know that we stress the most important words in a sentence, that helps us to understand what people are trying to emphasize and what we want to emphasize. Related to that is the idea of pausing and sometimes going slowly, right? The stress helps us to do that. On this script, I've got a slash every time Jacinda Ardern pauses, right? We can read it aloud together if you like. She says, budgets, even when designed to serve an entire country, an entire population. Notice what we did before with the going to France and Romania and Japan. We're just doing the same thing. Behind every single dollar is a story, and behind every single dollar is an unmet need. When she needs to slow down and emphasize something, she does something quite, she'll stress multiple syllables. No decision in this budget was ever taken lightly. No decision was ever flippant. So now, I think at wherever you are with your English and your own confidence and your own feeling of level, you can do something like this. And we're going to kind of show you how now. Right. I've got a question for you. If I ask you the question, what do you do? I probably won't ask, what do you do? I will probably stress one of those words more than the other. But just say it maybe in your head. Should it be what? Should it be do? Should it be you? Or the second do? Which word do you expect to be stressed?
The word you.
Oh, I think you should be able to choose it through Menti, and we'll see a group response. Lovely. Sarah's overthinking it. Oh, this is nice. Just want to see if we can get maybe 15 responses. I've got 9 so far. Okay, so according to this group, I think we're moving towards you. What do you do? Okay, and actually, ooh, I'm not presenting this as the answer, because actually, I think it depends. It depends on your meaning. Now, what do you do I've already, let's say, I can see Kim's in the room. I've already said to Kim, "Oh, Kim, what do you do?" And after I've asked Kim that question, and I move to Natalia, "Oh, but Natalia, what do you do?" So it's what's important here is you, right? So I'm emphasizing you. What do you do? But equally, what do you do? That's not a particularly polite way to answer that, ask that question at work. Like, why are you here? What do you do? It might be a conversation where someone's saying, I don't do spreadsheets, I don't do PowerPoint, I don't do teaching. All right, so what do you do? But what do you do? Right? This is like, well, what's your action? I know what you think, but what do you do? So depending on our meaning, depending on the context, anything is possible. Even, what do you do? After someone has told us something strange, surprising, maybe worrying. Okay. No. We're going to do an example of something with my wonderful colleague, Sarah. We've already talked about which syllable is stressed in the name Sarah, but I think if Sarah is introducing herself, she'll probably stress that Flynn, right? Sarah Flynn. And I think we typically do that with English names, a bit more stress on the surname. However, if she was being introduced alongside someone else called Flynn, we might say, yeah, this was Mick Flynn and this is Sarah Flynn. So it's not the same word that we stress every time in English. It absolutely depends on our meaning. Now, I've noticed, you may have noticed too, that we have some very long job titles in our university. And Sarah is such an important person that she's got, like, I think she's kind of got two things that she could say when she introduces herself. And I have a question for you. I'm really just asking you which job title or which role you like best. Do you think, I was very kindly referred to earlier as professor, and I'm not a professor, but Sarah is. So do you think it would be best for Sarah if she introduced herself in terms of professor or as deputy director? Or feel free to answer, I don't know. Okay. Kind of, and there's only one person who doesn't know. I think I don't know. And maybe Sarah doesn't know. Sarah, are you also the don't know?
I'm not. I haven't. I've
Okay.
abstained, but I may well have ticked that one.
Okay. What would you naturally go to for this audience?
For this audience, I think I would be more likely to say that I'm a professor of experiential learning. And that's because I associate being Deputy Director for Education as being something more meaningful for people in an internal university audience, because it helps them to locate me in a familiar hierarchy or setting. Whereas the professorship title is still relatively new to me. It's still slightly uncomfortable and surprising, but I understand that that is something that is more meaningful in a mixed university setting. So when I'm with people from different organizations, and actually quite often when I say people say to me, oh, who are you? I say, I'm Sarah Flynn, I'm from the University of Hertfordshire. And if they say to me, what do you do? I say, I'm a lecturer. And I still often say that because it's an everyday expression that is meaningful for people.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would have also said don't know, because just as you articulated brilliantly, it really depends on our audience and the impact that we think we might have on them and what they need and what they will understand. Just as you were speaking, Sarah, people were still voting for what was in the middle. So perhaps deputy director seems more impressive to some people. Maybe we're a room full of professors. Well, everyone's a professor, so yeah. Previously, I showed you an example of sound scripting, and I've tried to do sound scripting for Sarah's possible roles or job titles. And I hope I've got that right, but I think she's a professor of experiential learning, and she's Deputy Director for Education in the Centre for Education and Student Success. And now I want to hand over to you, and I'd like you to do the same. So who are you and what do you do? And you might want to write this down. The first thing would be to say, okay, you put yourself in front of an audience, you're introducing yourself, and you want to have an impact on them. You want them to remember who you are, and you want them to understand what you do. As Sarah says, outside of work, sometimes we just say things like, I'm a teacher, I work at the university. I think outside of work, I naturally lower my status, just I work over there. But sometimes you need to make an impact, you need to leave an impression on someone. You might only have 30 seconds to tell them what you do in a meaningful way. So I'd like you to just prepare some words, who you are, what you do, write down your job title in English, and then do the sound scripting exercise. So it might only just be one sentence, but in that sentence, where are you going to pause? And after you've paused, which syllables in which words are you going to stress to show that they're important? If you are confident and happy doing that, and you want to just add maybe one sentence or two, anything that you could say about your job, or if you're a researcher, the research you're doing, your passion and ambition, a new initiative that would leave an impression on someone, something that could be delivered in just 30 seconds, like Margaret Thatcher's U-turn. If for researchers in the room, I mean, I find that a real challenge, and it says something about where I am with my research. I tend to say something like, my research is about personal aspects of academic writing, and I'm still not very happy with that. I don't think that's the dynamic and impactful thing that I need to say to people about what I'm doing. So we're always working on these things. So if you are in a research project or you're in a writing project, actually having a statement like this, which you come back to and you amend and you improve on in time, and just practice saying to people, can be good for you and your fluency. We want to be able to have some time for you to actually use this. So we'll give you a couple of minutes just to prepare something. But then, if it's okay, Sarah, we'll ask people to go into breakout rooms, and then you can actually use it and give each other 30 seconds each to deliver impactfully who you are, what you do, either why it's important, why it's your passion, what your purpose is.
Thank you so much, Professor Mark Holloway. Well, I will speak in Vietnamese a little bit. Yeah. Dạ kính chào quý thầy cô, thì giờ mình có thể giải lao một chút, mình sẽ bắt đầu làm cái bài tập mà thầy vừa mới nói với mình. Sau đó thì em xin phép là sẽ có khoảng 3 thầy cô sẽ trình bày cái phần giới thiệu về bản thân trong 30 giây này. Tất nhiên là nếu mà nhiều hơn 30 giây thì sẽ welcome nhiều hơn ạ. Dạ. So hello everyone, we have like around 5 minutes break now for you to focus on the assignment from Professor Mark Holloway's. Well, in time, while other people focus on their 30-second introduction, if anyone want to do any discussion with Professor Mark Holloway or Professor Sarah, please welcome. Yeah. If you want to do any network connection, yes, please welcome.
We absolutely will have some time. We will absolutely have some time. We're planning to do that at the end of the breakout rooms. So if people want to do this exercise, and then colleagues will be into the breakout rooms. And then when people come back, Mark has allowed for time for questions and for discussion that he and I can stay here and have with people. So we think it's good for people to plan to have this practice with their statement. And Mark, let me know when you would like me to sort out the breakout rooms.
Yeah, well, I think there are also.
I think can I just, it's maybe not familiar with Vietnamese people in terms of term breakout rooms. So Nhung, can you just explain in Vietnamese to everyone about, we're gonna put people in a different room in a group for discussion about their statements. Nhung ơi,
Yeah, sure,
mình,
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Kính chào quý thầy cô, thì bây giờ phía ban tổ chức sẽ chia thành 10 cái phòng breakout room, và tụi em sẽ add các thầy cô một cách random vào trong các cái breakout room này. Các thầy cô có thể làm quen với nhau và cùng nhau thảo luận để tạo ra một cái bài giới thiệu 30 giây về bản thân. Dạ, cảm ơn quý thầy cô.
Great. Shall we go to those rooms for,
Yeah,
say, 5 minutes?
That'd be great. And if you are, I think there's a very good chance you'll have an English language expert in the room with you, because we've got Natalia here, and we've got our students Tu, Mai, and Jang, all from the MAT Seoul at Hertfordshire, and there's expertise in the air.
Okay, I'll open them up. Seem to have quite a lot of people who have not joined their breakout room. You could accept any, if you see a pop-up on the window in the screen, that should move you to a breakout room.
That worked.
Almost.
I'm guessing, Sarah, I'm not sharing anymore.
You're not. No, you'd need to reshare if you
Yes.
would like to. We may still have a few people coming back from breakout rooms because they're not quite all closed yet.
Yeah.
So if people are waiting to be automatically returned to the main room, then then we'll have them with us shortly. Okay, that's all the rooms closed, Mark. So hopefully that means that colleagues who are still with us would like to will return back to this room.
Lovely.
Yes. We have a very interesting discussion, and we have a lot of excellent 30-second introduction statement. Like from Miss Yang Nguyen or Miss Võ Ngang Thơ from Tôn Đức Thắng University. Yeah, thank you for have a breakout room time.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I think it's great that we had the opportunity to speak to each other a little, but it would be great to talk more. Our final slide in our Menti is really just to invite any questions, any comments, anything you'd like us to talk about for the final 5 or 6 minutes. And I'm also very happy if anyone wants to put their camera on and speak instead of typing, but the option is there for you to choose.
And as with our previous workshop, we have some flexibility now. And I think Young Yu offered the opportunity for some interaction. So we would really welcome that. I think you've got a raised hand, Mark.
Oh, have I?
Yes,
I'm sorry, everyone.
you.
We don't usually use Zoom. We're Microsoft Teams people. And so the last time I used it, Zoom now has more features than when I last used it. Usually I just attend. I think it's got some AI. I've got an AI companion flashing, offering me something, offering me some help. Is my hand still raised?
No, not your hand. I think we have somebody who was hoping to make a contribution.
Sorry, great.
But I missed the name. So please just unmute yourself and let us know your contribution.
Yes, so it's a networking time. Dạ, trong trường hợp quý thầy cô có câu hỏi nào thì mình cứ mạnh dạn hỏi giúp em, tụi em sẽ có phiên dịch tại chỗ. Dạ, mình cứ mạnh dạn mình hỏi à. Dạ.
Hello.
So, hello, Professor. Yeah, yes, please. Well, yeah.
Hello. So my name is Giang. I come from Vietnam. I'm actually not a lecturer or professor from university. I work with university students, like do short-cut training about design thinking and sustainability for them. But yeah, not a full-time lecturer. But I think the workshop today is really interesting because like 1 year ago, I have a change, like I have a small talk with my friend. He's from France and he studied in UK. And I share with him that like usually in Vietnam, when people talk about a successful like leader woman, they usually say that she's like a man, like she acts like a man, she speaks like a man, her decision making is like a man. So I think it's like why like why you need to be a man to be like a successful woman in a leadership role. So I bring it to my friend and discuss with him to see is there any difference between
maybe some problem with internet connection.
Sorry, Zhang, we lost you.
Yeah, we lost a little bit there, but I think we
Yes.
are still recording. So if we maybe just give a small response, and then when that connection is back, we can pick up the conversation, or at least the recording will capture that. I think that's a really common reflection about the style of women and leadership. And I think the example that Mark showed us, particularly thinking about the advice that Margaret Thatcher was given from her voice coach about slowing down her speech and dropping the tone of her voice, but also using that lifting intonation, was about mimicking speech patterns that were more commonly heard from male leaders. But it's hard to say whether that is because they were male or because it just happened to be that the majority of leaders were male. But it's certainly true that the characteristics in the UK, if you had been on a leadership course in the last, say, 20 years ago, you would have been told that leadership was about strength and about things that we might describe as typically masculine characteristics. And I think certainly in the last 5 to 10 years in the UK, there's been much more of an acceptance about the fact that leadership looks different to different people, and that you can have a full range of characteristics, and that you have some people who are quieter leaders, but who bring kindness and compassion and are not forceful, and that counteracts some of the things that maybe particularly have been described more typically as masculine gendered characteristics. And indeed in the MOOC that will go with this series of workshops, we explore those things in more detail. So I would really encourage people, once the MOOC is available for enrolment, to sign up, and then you'll be able to explore some of those things in more detail. I don't know if you wanted to add to that, Mark.
I just wanted to add that if Zhang is watching the recording, I thought the way she introduced herself and nailed what she does and why she was speaking was that, you know, a great example of making a point very clearly and very well. But yeah, that's precisely it, isn't it? I think that it's also what's in the wider culture, the idea that, you know, Thatcher in this country was the Iron Lady. And if you think about kind of leadership speeches in UK history, a very famous one actually comes from Elizabeth I, where what she's saying is, I may look like a woman, but I'm like a man. And I think we've come a long way from there. And I think the way maternity and being maternal has come to be related to leadership qualities, I think is also quite interesting in this country. We've had like political leadership elections where two women competing to become the leader of the Conservative Party. One of them made the point, well, you know, I'm a mum, that's a reason why I'm a better leader. And that was quite a controversial thing to do, but it says something that she felt it was an asset rather than not.
I think that's true, isn't it, Mark? I think we have to think about those things just a little bit. And I'm interested in leaning into the comment that is in the chat that says, in your opinion, who is a better leader? Let me be super clear, folks. I'm always going to be team girl, but that's my own individual bias. And I would also lean into the fact that some of the major catastrophic things that have happened across the globe over the years have always been led by men. So I would look at the evidence before me, but I am being slightly cheeky and trying to be slightly humorous there. I think there is nothing inherent about whether you are a man, a woman, whether you identify as non-binary. I think we see different characteristics across different people. And I think whilst we would look at the data, and part of this project is about making sure that there is better representation of women in leadership roles, for me, that is because that brings a diversity of thought, of approach, and of perspective. But it is possible to have a group of women who have a narrow set of diversity, thought and perspective in the same way that it is a man. So it's if a group of men. So I don't think there is anything particularly inherent. What we are dealing with is society and its expectations and constructs of thinking about equating being a leader with being something, whether that is being male, whether that is being of a particular racialized identity, whether that's of being a particular age, whether that is being from a particular part of a country or from a particular educational background. It isn't that anything about that one thing makes you a better leader or not. I think but it can create a sense of expectations, because if everybody who has gone before has done that, why would anybody who is different to that be able to do it? So I think it's about challenging that history and societal norms. But I think that requires self-awareness. And Mark, I really loved your two questions that you asked us, what do you, I'm going to forget, what do you notice and what does it make you wonder? And I think that if we have that open-mindedness, that for me is one of that top characteristics around leadership, and that's irrespective of whether you're a man or a woman.
I see that Zhang is back with us, and Zhang, we were trying to answer your question, although we didn't hear the end of it. I don't know if you wanted to add any more. It's good to see you back.
Yeah, sorry, I have the power sorted. But yeah, I think it's really interesting because, I have a soft voice. So before, when I think maybe I can be a leader and take some role in the leadership space. But then people said that my voice is too soft, that I cannot empower people with my voice. And it's not a leadership voice. So I think it's really interesting to have the discussion today and understand about this. And another thinking is about in a vice versa way, sometimes a man, if they have too soft voice, then they also have criticize about it as well. So I think about no need to have a specific binary, like you mentioned, non-binary, no need to fall into a specific spectrum to be a leadership. You can be fall into soft or strong or soft or concise voice. It's more about your ability and who you are. So even I have a soft voice, I think I can be a leader. I think this should be the message that everyone taken and be confident about themselves as well. So yeah, just some thought from me.
It's very, very well said, Zhang. Absolutely. I think we can make our voices what they need to be. Okay.
Do we have anyone else who would like to say something or to ask a question before we get to the end of our session? I think probably not then. So that sounds like we're almost at the end of our session. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Mark. I've become very aware of how I am speaking now, which I think is maybe not your intent, but I'm going to enjoy reflecting on that today. But that is absolutely super. Thank you very much to everybody who has come along this afternoon for the session. We will continue. This was the second in a series of online workshops. We will continue running these across the rest of this year, and we will have the colleagues at HUTECH have the publicity page with the information about all of the upcoming workshops, which they will make sure everybody has access to. And we look forward to, in just over 1 month's time, myself and Helen, who were here this morning, will be able to visit our partner organisations in Vietnam and do some work with you in person. So we are very much looking forward to that. But for this morning, in our case, thank you to colleagues from the UK for joining us and for colleagues from Vietnam and wider afield. But I think that's us for now. Thank you, Nhung. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Before we leave, I would like to say thank you for Professor Robbie Matthew, the Director of International Relations from Sigma University. Thank you so much for joining us in the workshop today. I can see that you opened your camera, hold the workshop. You want to talk anything about our workshop? Yeah.
It was a very good experience. I was joined by my colleagues at Sigma University, and I think I'm the only male over here, but I was very interested in knowing the workshop. I was very impressed with the concept of it, and I really agree with the whole idea behind it. So thank you so much. It was very interesting to hear Professor Holloway and Sarah come up with the whole perspective about these things. And the best part is because we've had visitors from HUTECH University, including the Vice President recently. It was very great to interact with them and to see them all over again. And to be a part of HUTECH University is a great opportunity. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. So our workshop is end now. Thank you once again. And I hope that you can spend your time to do the survey form for us. And because we want to improve our workshop in the future. And bye-bye and see you in the next online workshop.